The papers hit the coffee table with a sound that might as well have been thunder. Sarah didn't even look up from her laptop. Just kept typing. Click, click, click. Like she was composing my obituary instead of whatever meaningless email had captured her attention. "What are these?" I asked, though the red lettering across the top already told me everything I needed to know. Divorce papers. My wife of 7 years had just served me divorce papers like I was some stranger who'd overstayed his welcome. She finally looked up. Those green eyes that used to light up when I walked through the door now looked at me like I was something she'd stepped in. "What does it look like, Marcus?" The apartment suddenly felt smaller. The walls pressed closer. Everything we'd built together, every dream we'd shared, every late-night conversation about our future, reduced to legal documents with my name spelled wrong in 3 different places. "Sarah, what the hell is this about?" She closed the laptop with a snap that echoed through our tiny living room. The same living room where we danced to our wedding song just 2 months ago when the neighbors were out. The same couch where we'd planned our dream house, sketching layouts on napkins while eating takeout Chinese food. "You want to know what this is about?" She stood up, and I could see the storm that had been brewing behind those eyes. "This is about you living in Fantasyland, Marcus. This is about your ridiculous software project that's going nowhere. This is about me working 60-hour weeks while you chase pipe dreams." The words hit like physical blows, each one designed to cut deeper than the last. "My project isn't a pipe dream. The prototype is almost finished. I just need more time." "Time?" She laughed, and it was the kind of laugh that could freeze fire. "You've been saying that for 2 years. 2 years, Marcus. While I've been busting my ass at the marketing firm, you've been in that spare bedroom pretending to build the next Google. It's not pretending. You've seen the code. You know how revolutionary this could be." She shook her head like she was dealing with a child who refused to understand that Santa Claus wasn't real. "Revolutionary? Marcus, you're 28 years old. You dropped out of your engineering job to pursue this fantasy. We're behind on rent, again. I had to borrow money from my sister to keep the electricity on." The shame burned in my chest like acid. She was right about the money. The savings account we'd built together had evaporated months ago. My unemployment benefits had run out. The credit cards were maxed. But she was wrong about everything else. "This software is going to change everything, Sarah. Once I finish the security protocols, we'll have companies lining up to buy it. This is artificial intelligence that can predict market fluctuations with 97% accuracy. Do you understand what that means?" "What I understand is that we're about to get evicted because my husband lives in a fantasy world." The word husband came out like a curse, like something dirty she needed to wash off her tongue. "Give me 3 more months. Just 3 months and I can prove to you that this isn't some fantasy. I can show you that everything we've sacrificed will be worth it." She picked up the papers and held them out to me like a weapon. "I'm done sacrificing, Marcus. I'm done pretending this is going to work. I'm done waiting for you to grow up and face reality." "So that's it. 7 years and you're just throwing it all away?" "I'm not throwing anything away. You already did that when you decided your imaginary empire was more important than our actual life." The apartment fell silent except for the sound of my heart hammering against my ribs. Outside, traffic hummed past our window like the world was moving on without us. Like our entire relationship was just some minor inconvenience that wouldn't even register on anyone else's radar. "I want you out by Friday," she said, and her voice had gone cold, professional, like she was firing an underperforming employee instead of ending our marriage. "Where am I supposed to go?" "That's not my problem anymore." She walked toward the bedroom, then stopped at the doorway. "Your computer stuff can stay until you find somewhere permanent, but I want you gone." The door closed behind her with a finality that echoed through my bones. I stood there in our living room, holding divorce papers and wondering how 7 years of love could evaporate faster than steam. But underneath the shock and the pain, something else was building. Something sharp and cold and determined. She wanted me gone? Fine. She thought I was a dreamer living in Fantasyland? Fine. She thought my project was worthless. She was about to find out just how wrong she could be. 3 days later, I was sitting in my best friend Jake's barely converted garage, surrounded by boxes that contained my entire life. My clothes, my books, my computer equipment, and the external hard drives that held 2 years of work, 2 years of code that Sarah had dismissed as fantasy. Jake brought me a beer and sat down on his weightlifting bench. "So what's the plan, man? You gonna fight the divorce?" "No." I took a long drink and stared at the concrete floor. "I'm going to finish the project." "Marcus, I love you like a brother, but maybe Sarah has a point. Maybe it's time to get back into the job market. I could put in a word with my boss. The construction company's always looking for someone with an engineering background." I wanted to explain it to him, wanted to make him understand that what I'd built wasn't just some app or simple program. This was artificial intelligence that could analyze market data, social media trends, news patterns, and economic indicators to predict stock movements with unprecedented accuracy. This was technology that could make someone incredibly wealthy, incredibly fast. But Jake wouldn't understand. Just like Sarah hadn't understood. Just like everyone who'd looked at me over the past 2 years hadn't understood. "Just give me a place to crash for a few weeks," I said. "That's all I need." What I didn't tell him was that I'd already been in contact with 3 potential buyers. What I didn't mention was that Global Tech Industries had requested a full demonstration after seeing my preliminary data. What I kept to myself was that in 72 hours, I had a meeting that could change everything. I spent the next 3 days fine-tuning the algorithm. Sleep became optional, food became an afterthought. I lived on energy drinks and determination, making sure every line of code was perfect. Making sure the prediction models were flawless. Making sure that when I walked into that conference room, I could prove that my fantasy was actually the future. The night before the Global Tech meeting, I called my brother David in Chicago. He was the one person who'd always believed in the project, even when I'd started to doubt myself. "How are you feeling about tomorrow?" he asked. "Terrified, excited, ready to prove everyone wrong." "And if it doesn't work out?" I looked around Jake's garage, at the boxes that contained everything I owned, at the laptop screen showing code that had consumed 2 years of my life. Then I guess Sarah was right, and I really am just a dreamer. "Marcus, you know I've seen your program work. I've watched it predict market movements that professional analysts missed. You're not a dreamer, you're just early." Early. That word stuck with me as I tried to sleep that night on Jake's lumpy couch. Maybe that was the difference between dreamers and visionaries. Dreamers chased impossible things. Visionaries saw what was coming before anyone else did. The Global Tech headquarters building rose 43 stories into the Seattle skyline like a glass and steel monument to corporate power. I stood on the sidewalk for a moment, wearing my best suit and carrying the laptop that contained my future, and tried to push down the voice in my head that sounded remarkably like Sarah. What if she was right? What if this was all just elaborate self-delusion? What if I was about to walk into that building and humiliate myself in front of people who could ruin any chance I had of working in tech again? But then I thought about the dismissive look in her eyes when she'd handed me those divorce papers. I thought about the way she'd said, "Fantasyland," like it was a disease I needed to be cured of. I thought about 2 years of sacrifice and dedication being reduced to a failure to face reality. The elevator ride to the 37th floor felt like ascending to Judgment Day. Lisa Chen, Global Tech's Vice President of Acquisitions, met me in the lobby with a handshake that could have crushed walnuts. She was the kind of woman who probably ate startups for breakfast and used their stock options as toothpicks. "Mr. Rodriguez, I hope you're ready to show us something impressive." The conference room contained 6 people who looked like they could collectively buy and sell small countries. The kind of people who made decisions that affected thousands of jobs and millions of dollars before their morning coffee got cold. I connected my laptop to their system and pulled up the demonstration that would either vindicate 2 years of my life or confirm that I was exactly the delusional failure Sarah thought I was. Ladies and gentlemen, what you're about to see is an artificial intelligence system that can predict stock market movements with 97% accuracy over a 6-month period. Lisa Chen raised an eyebrow. "That's quite a claim, Mr. Rodriguez. Every hedge fund in the world would kill for that kind of accuracy. Which is exactly why you should want to own it." I pulled up the historical data. 6 months of predictions my algorithm had made, compared against actual market performance. The room fell silent as they realized what they were looking at. "How?" asked one of the executives, a man whose watch probably cost more than most people's cars. "The algorithm analyzes over 40,000 data points per minute. Social media sentiment, news patterns, economic indicators, political developments, weather patterns, celebrity trends. Everything that can influence market psychology. I showed them real-time predictions. I demonstrated how the system had accurately called 3 major market corrections that professional analysts had missed. I walked them through the methodology that had consumed every waking hour for the past 2 years. By the time I finished, the room was so quiet I could hear my own heartbeat. Lisa Chen leaned back in her chair and studied me like I was a puzzle she was trying to solve. Mr. Rodriguez, assuming this system performs as advertised, what kind of licensing arrangement were you thinking? Not licensing, purchase, complete acquisition. And what kind of number did you have in mind? This was the moment. Everything I'd worked for, everything I'd sacrificed, everything Sarah had called a fantasy, came down to the next words out of my mouth. $12 million. The silence stretched like a tightrope. 12 million was enough to change everything, enough to prove that the past 2 years hadn't been wasted. Enough to show Sarah and everyone else that sometimes dreamers are just people who see the future before it arrives. Lisa Chen exchanged glances with her colleagues. Secret communication passed between them in looks and subtle gestures. We'll need to run our own tests, of course. Due diligence. But if your system performs as demonstrated, she paused and smiled, we might be able to work something out. The meeting ended with handshakes and business cards and promises to be in touch within the week. I walked out of that building feeling like I was floating 6 inches off the ground. My phone buzzed as I reached the sidewalk. A text from Sarah. Can we talk? There are some things we need to work out with the divorce. I stared at that message for a long moment. 3 days ago, talking to Sarah would have felt like reopening a fresh wound. Now it felt like ancient history. I typed back, I'll call you later, in a meeting. It wasn't technically true anymore, but it felt good to write it. The call came on Thursday morning while I was eating breakfast at Jake's kitchen table. Lisa Chen's name appeared on my phone screen, and my heart immediately shifted into overdrive. Mr. Rodriguez, are you sitting down? Should I be? We've completed our preliminary analysis of your system. The performance metrics are extraordinary. More than extraordinary, actually. We'd like to make you an offer. The coffee cup in my hand suddenly felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. However, there's been a slight adjustment to the terms we discussed. My stomach dropped. This was where they lowered the price, where they explained that 12 million was unrealistic for an unproven startup, where they offered me some insulting fraction and expected me to be grateful. The board feels that 12 million doesn't adequately reflect the revolutionary nature of what you've built. Wait, what? We're prepared to offer you $18 million for complete acquisition of the technology and exclusive rights. The words hit me like a physical force. 18 million, not 12, 18. Mr. Rodriguez, are you there? I'm here, I'm just processing. We'd like to expedite the deal if possible. Can you be back here tomorrow to finalize the terms? I hung up and sat in Jake's kitchen, staring at my phone like it had just delivered news from another planet. $18 million. For the project Sarah had called a fantasy. For the dream she'd said was destroying our marriage. For the pipe dream that had supposedly proven I was living in an imaginary world. The first person I called was my brother David. Holy shit, Marcus. 18 million? Are you serious? I'm serious. They want to close the deal tomorrow. That's incredible, man. That's absolutely incredible. What are you going to do with all that money? That was a good question. What do you do with $18 million when you've been living on energy drinks and sleeping on your friend's couch? The answer came to me before I even realized I was thinking about it. I'm going to buy a house, I said. A really, really nice house. Smart investment. Real estate is always solid. Yeah, but I'm thinking somewhere specific. That afternoon, I drove through Sarah's neighborhood, our old neighborhood where we'd rented the apartment that had felt too small for my ambitions. The same neighborhood where she'd handed me divorce papers and told me to face reality. 3 blocks from our old apartment building, I found exactly what I was looking for. A mansion. Not just a big house, but an actual mansion with gates and a circular driveway and windows that probably cost more than most people's cars. The kind of place that made statements about its owner. The kind of place that said fantasy was a relative term. The for sale sign in the front yard listed it at $4.7 million. I called the number. The global tech deal closed on a Friday afternoon in a conference room that overlooked the Seattle waterfront. I signed papers until my hand cramped, shook hands with executives who called me a visionary, and walked out with a check that had more zeros than I'd ever seen in one place. $18 million. After taxes and fees, I'd still have enough money to live comfortably for the rest of my life. Enough to prove that Sarah's definition of reality had been catastrophically narrow. The mansion purchase happened so fast it felt surreal. Cash offers have a way of cutting through red tape like a knife through tissue paper. By the following Wednesday, I owned a 7-bedroom, 8-bathroom monument to vindication, complete with a 3-car garage, a swimming pool, and a view that stretched across the entire city. The best part? It was exactly 4 houses down from the apartment where Sarah still lived. I moved in on a Thursday morning, hiring a team of professional movers who treated my few boxes of belongings like precious artifacts. Most of the furniture came from high-end stores, delivered and arranged by interior designers who specialized in making statements. I was standing in my new living room, admiring the way sunlight streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows when my phone rang. Sarah's name on the screen sent a familiar jolt through my system. Marcus, what the hell is going on? Good morning to you too, Sarah. Don't mess with me. Mrs. Patterson next door says you moved into the Morrison mansion. She says she saw you directing movers yesterday. Mrs. Patterson was the neighborhood gossip, 90 years old and with better surveillance capabilities than the FBI. Of course, she'd been watching. Mrs. Patterson is a very observant woman. Marcus, that house costs almost $5 million. What kind of game are you playing? I walked to the front window and looked down the street toward the apartment building where my wife was presumably standing with her phone, trying to make sense of what Mrs. Patterson had told her. No games, Sarah, just reality. This isn't funny. I know you don't have that kind of money. Actually, I do. As of last Friday, I have considerably more than that kind of money. The silence on the other end of the call stretched like a fault line before an earthquake. What are you talking about? Remember that fantasy project you were so eager to divorce me over? Global Tech Industries bought it for $18 million. The silence that followed was so complete, I wondered if the call had dropped. You're lying. I'm really not. Would you like to see the check confirmation? It's quite impressive. $18 million for your stupid software? The word stupid landed like a slap across the face. Even now, even with proof that she'd been catastrophically wrong, she couldn't bring herself to admit it. Not stupid, Sarah, revolutionary, just like I told you it would be. This is impossible. This has to be some kind of mistake. The only mistake was thinking you knew the difference between dreams and vision. I hung up while she was still sputtering protests and walked back to my new kitchen, where I made myself coffee using a machine that cost more than our monthly rent used to be. Through the window, I could see the apartment building where we used to live, where she'd handed me divorce papers and told me to grow up, where she'd dismissed 2 years of work as fantasy. The irony was almost too perfect to be real. My phone buzzed with a text message. Sarah again. We need to talk. This changes everything. I stared at that message for a long moment, then typed back. No, it doesn't. The divorce papers you served me made that pretty clear. Marcus, please. I made a mistake. We both made mistakes. This changes everything. It changes my bank account balance. It doesn't change the fact that when I needed you to believe in me, you chose to walk away. I was scared. I was tired of being broke and stressed and uncertain about everything. And I was tired of having my dreams called fantasies by the one person who was supposed to believe in me. The text conversation ended there, but I knew it wasn't over. Money has a way of making people reconsider their positions in ways that love and loyalty never could. Over the next few days, I settled into my new reality. The mansion felt enormous after months of sleeping on Jake's couch, but it also felt right. Like I was finally living in a space that matched my ambitions, instead of trying to squeeze those ambitions into spaces that were too small. I bought a car to match the house, a Tesla Moon Doe S that drove like a spaceship and made exactly the kind of statement I wanted to make. Success wasn't just about having money. It was about displaying that money in ways that couldn't be ignored or dismissed. On Sunday morning, I was washing the Tesla in my driveway when Sarah appeared at the gate. She looked smaller than I remembered. Or maybe I just felt bigger. Marcus, we need to talk. I turned off the hose and studied her through the ornate iron bars that separated my property from the sidewalk. What's there to talk about? You made yourself pretty clear the last time we spoke. I made a mistake. You served me divorce papers, Sarah. That's not a mistake. That's a decision. A bad decision. I was scared and stupid, and I panicked. She pressed her face against the gate like she was in some kind of prison, which, in a way, she was. A prison of her own making. I never stopped loving you, Marcus. Even when I was angry, even when I was scared about the money, I never stopped loving you. Funny way of showing it. Please, just let me in so we can talk properly. I looked at her standing there, begging to be let into the life she'd kicked me out of. The life she'd dismissed as fantasy. The life she'd decided wasn't worth fighting for. The woman who served me divorce papers told me that my dreams were pipe dreams. She told me I needed to face reality. She told me to grow up. I was wrong. I was completely, totally wrong. Yes, you were. I turned the hose back on and continued washing my car. Behind me, I could hear Sarah's breathing through the fence. Sharp, desperate. The sound of someone realizing they'd made a catastrophic error in judgment. Marcus, please, don't do this. I'm not doing anything. You already did it. The divorce isn't final yet. We can stop it. We can fix this. I turned around and looked at her directly. You want to know what the difference is between dreams and reality, Sarah? Dreams are what you chase when you believe in something bigger than your current circumstances. Reality is what happens when those dreams succeed. So what happens now? Now you get to live with your choices, just like I had to live with mine. Marcus, I know I hurt you. I know I let you down, but people make mistakes. People get scared and do stupid things. Some mistakes can't be fixed with apologies. I finished washing the car and walked toward my front door. The mansion rose above me like a monument to vindication. This isn't over, Sarah called after me. Yes, it is. But as I closed the door behind me, I knew she was right. It wasn't over. Money doesn't erase history. Success doesn't heal betrayal. And living 4 houses away from the woman who'd given up on you doesn't provide the satisfaction you think it will. Inside my beautiful, enormous, empty mansion, I sat in a living room that could have hosted 50 people, and realized that winning doesn't always feel like victory. My phone buzzed with another text from Sarah. I'll fight for us. I'll do whatever it takes to fix this. I typed back. You had your chance to fight for us. You chose divorce papers instead. Then I turned off my phone and sat in the silence of my expensive vindication, wondering why $18 million felt heavier than I'd expected it to. Outside, the city sprawled beneath my windows like a promise of endless possibilities. But inside, I was still just Marcus Rodriguez, sitting alone with the echoes of a marriage that had ended not because love died, but because faith did. The dream had come true. The fantasy had become reality. So why did victory taste so much like loss?